In this episode of Spaceflight News, we will present you a trio of captivating topics from astronautics. We must begin with nothing else than the launch of Falcon Heavy carrying the Psyche interplanetary spacecraft. Continuing with SpaceX again, we shall take a look at the launch of another batch of Starlink communications satellites. To conclude this episode, we shall focus on the Chinese launch that delivered a meteorological satellite into orbit. On Thursday, October 12th, the weather in Florida forced the postponement of the Falcon Heavy launch to the following day. On Friday, October 13th at 14:19 Universal Time, the 27 Merlin rocket engines ignited and Falcon Heavy launched from the pad 39A.
And liftoff. Liftoff of Falcon Heavy and Psyche on a mission to a metal asteroid in deep space to study the building blocks of our planet's inner space.
This was the 8th launch for Falcon Heavy, yet it had never previously carried a scientific payload for NASA. Consequently, this mission was its most scientifically valuable to date.
View there from onboard camera on booster. Beautiful shot there as it goes through the clouds.
The critical moment was the separation of the two side boosters. As their separation proceeded without incident, the central stage was able to increase the thrust of its engines to full capacity. While the two side boosters have been utilized for the 4th time, the central stage was brand new. This is unsurprising, as Falcon Heavy's central stage has either not been recovered or the company has not even attempted to do so. This was also the case on the current mission. The central stage was discarded without any effort at recovery. The two side boosters, however, returned to Florida, where they landed on the landing zones LZ-1 and LZ-2. The upper stage achieved orbit with its first burn. The second burn, which occurred approximately 55 minutes after the launch, accelerated the whole stack so that its trajectory led outside the Earth's gravitational sphere of influence. 62 minutes after the launch, Psyche spacecraft with a mass of 2.7 metric tons could be separated from the upper stage. Shortly thereafter, the control center detected its radio signal, confirming that the probe was operational. This robotic explorer is equipped with 4 ion engines that will alternate between running in sequence. Their thrust is low, only 270 millinewtons. This is roughly equivalent to the force exerted by a AA battery placed in the palm of one's hand. Ion engines in general don't have much thrust, but they can run for very long periods of time and their fuel consumption is very efficient. In this instance, the propellant of the engines is xenon, of which they have just over a ton. Plans call for the engines to run for a total of 925 days during the entire mission. Psyche is dominated by colossal photovoltaic panels, each composed of 5 arrays arranged in the shape of a cross. These panels have a total area of 75 square meters and a total of 22,730 cells, with an efficiency of 29.5%. Psyche has a lengthy journey through interplanetary space. In 2026, it will perform a gravity maneuver near Mars, and in 2029, it will reach its destination, the asteroid 16 Psyche, which orbits between Mars and Jupiter. This is a type of world that no human spacecraft has ever visited. For the most part, this asteroid is not composed of rocks or ice as is customary, but of metal, specifically iron and nickel. The Psyche spacecraft will study the eponymous asteroid from orbit for at least 21 months. For this purpose, it is equipped with a multispectral sensor, spectrometer, and magnetometers. Among other things, scientists are interested in whether this asteroid is the remnant of a body that may have become a planet. It may have lost its crust and mantle in a collision with another object. In that case, it would be the core of a protoplanet. The possibility of studying it up close would yield a tremendous amount of knowledge even about our own planet. We must not forget an interesting technological test. The Psyche spacecraft is equipped with the DSOC technology demonstrator. Its mission will be to test laser communication with the ground control at a distance of 0.1 to 2.5 astronomical units. 1 astronomical unit corresponds to the average distance of the Earth from the Sun, roughly 150 million kilometers. This will be the first time laser communication will be tested from a distance greater than from the Moon. There are high hopes for this technology, as it is capable of transmitting significantly higher amount of data than conventional radio systems can manage. Just a few hours after the launch of SpaceX's Falcon Heavy with the Psyche, another SpaceX launch took place. This time, Falcon 9 rocket took off from the SLC-40 pad at 23:01 Universal Time on October 13th.
Engines full power and liftoff of Starlink. Go Starlink, go Falcon.
The payload for this mission comprised of 22 second-generation Starlink mini satellites, each weighing approximately 800 kilograms and boasting 4 times the transmission capacity of their predecessors. The payload was delivered to an orbit approximately 290 kilometers in altitude, inclined at 43 degrees to the equator. From this orbit, the satellites will transit to their final operational orbit by their own argon-ion propulsion. The Falcon 9 first stage has been employed for the 14th time on this mission. As is customary with Starlink satellite missions, it was unable to return to land and had to be landed on an autonomous drone ship. A shortfall of gravitas was placed approximately 615 kilometers from the launch site. At 0:54 Universal Time on the 15th of September, the Long March 2D rocket was launched from China's Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. This marked the 107th launch from the SLS-2 launch pad and the 82nd flight of the Long March 2D rocket, which has not experienced a single failure and has only once delivered a payload to an unintended orbit, constituting a partial failure. The single satellite delivered to a sun-synchronous orbit was Yunhai 104. We do not have much information about it, but according to the official statement, it will prove services for the detection of the atmospheric, marine, and space environments, disaster prevention and mitigation, and scientific experiments. Thank you for your attention to today's episode of Spaceflight News. We are delighted in your interest in space news, and to ensure you do not miss future episodes, kindly consider subscribing to our channel. Additionally, you can find other interesting news on our profile on social network X, formerly known as Twitter. The link can be found in the video description.